The Banking Scene Director's Cut goes behind the scenes, sharing stories and insights to help you build the bank of tomorrow.
FiDA, the proposed financial data access regulation, has been a bit of a contentious topic over this last year, while being debated at European Parliament level and indeed at our own events. During Sibos 2025 in Frankfurt, Rik and I were invited by Joris Hensen, the founder and co-lead of the Deutsche Bank API program, to join an evening session following a full-day FiDA Data Studio workshop that they held in collaboration with TechQuartier at their Eintracht Lab, to see and hear the output from the day. You can read our own thoughts and insights on the blog linked in the description below, but for this episode, we go behind the scenes with two industry experts who actually participated in the full-day program to hear their thoughts. First up, we hear from Nicola Breyer, Open Finance advisor and expert from the Open Finance Ecosystem Organization, who some of you might remember from our conference in Amsterdam earlier this year.
Hello, Nicola. Good to see you again.
Rik, nice to see you again. It's not been long since we met.
It's not been long. About a week. And that was at the stadium of Eintracht Frankfurt. And actually a few days later also at Sibos again in Frankfurt. But at the FiDA Data Studio event by Deutsche Bank and TechQuartier, we got an update on FiDA, where we are and where we may be going. That's not the first conversation we had together about FiDA. I remember vividly the chat that we had in Amsterdam, and that was a rather tumultuous period of FiDA, a few months after Politico announced that there was no longer going to be a FiDA. Then there was some FiDA. Where are we today? And what's the roadmap going forward?
So we proved all the naysayers on FiDA wrong so far. FiDA is very much alive. The Danish presidency has taken FiDA further. In fact, they've reinforced the message that FiDA is very much going to happen. And since then, a number of countries as well as associations have published non-papers. That was summer. They've given them more feedback on the latest EU proposal. Over the summer, they actually put quite a few people onto it to look at all the proposals. They, again, in their turn, then the presidency put a new
Those
proposal.
politicians were on the holiday.
Yeah, that was over the holidays, actually, or just after. And they then put another non-paper together, which had a few reductions of the usual, the previous scope, which was more around, eliminating corporates, reducing the history of the data that needed to be done. There's a debate ongoing around closed contracts, and there's not a debate around the scope of the products, with one exception. And there's a question around the employer pensions being included or not.
Okay.
In broad terms, there's a lot more to be discussed, but
That's still an open question about the gatekeepers, I expect.
There's huge questions. So this is the next step. So they published that, and then the industry, in broad terms, all the European associations responded with a paper that once again asked for FiDA to be abolished, with the main reason being the exclusion of the gatekeeper. Well, basically, they said we are in support of FiDA. If
losing that level playing field.
Correct. They're afraid of that. So they basically said, we're happy to discuss a pragmatic implementation of FiDA if the international gatekeepers are being kept out, if we get further proof and pragmatism around customer demand, which is, as you and I have discussed many times, is a bit of a problem because horse, car, and I think there's then a third one around some timelines of implementations. These are the same arguments we've heard for a long time. This time, the fintech industry actually gathered and responded yet again with a non-paper and a letter, and very much it's not a non-paper.
What's with those non-papers lately?
Yes. So actually, in fact, I'm sorry, those two were letters. So it's another letter from the community, including the ETTPA and others, in favor of FiDA, which was actually very well written, I have to say. And we also were asked to contribute as German Open Finance Charta. And so that was very much in favor. that's pretty much where we stand. We're in trilogue. We are seeing good progress. From what I'm hearing, there's more and more acceptance that FiDA will happen. And so we're very much expecting to see formal progress, I'd say, towards the end of this month, early next month. So
Okay,
within
very interesting.
Q4.
So I guess we should add FiDA, hopefully, on our calendar again for the events next year when we rethink relevance from a banking point of view at our conference at the banking scene.
Yeah, I mean, as you and I have discussed so many times, we are seeing so much progress internationally, and we're seeing so much happening in the world of AI and data that we really need FiDA to go if we want it to go on, if we want Europe to stay level playing field with the rest of the world.
All right. We were at the event of Deutsche Bank in TechQuartier. Personally, I must admit, I didn't learn that much at the event, except that in terms of discussions, etc., on what we may expect, we probably had those conversations, and now it's time to start acting, but we don't know how just yet until the discussions are finalized. What were your key takeaways of the event?
My key takeaways are that I think it is really important that we have people from the industry like Joris from Deutsche Bank, pushing the topic forward, getting more and more stakeholders from within the bank interested and rallying the ecosystem.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
whether or not we actually are discussing actual progress in terms of, amazing innovation is not that important as long as we educate and more people around it. And I agree, we're probably coming to the point where we need to act more than we talk. But I think it was a great opportunity also as a side event of Sibos to visualize and have this ability to put things onto paper and then expose it in the evening, in a condensed format. I think that helped everyone to fully understand again, the topic is really important. We've got so many interconnected topics of identity, AI topics, whether it's
Insurance, banking, pensions,
and that we need the ecosystem to act. We can't, this is not a siloed approach. This is not a bank versus fintech.
Because if you approach it that way, you risk to end with the same results as PSD1 or even PSD and the whole open banking, which is almost nowhere in Europe. If you look at it with a bit of skepticism.
Well, it's because the UX for payments has been so bad, is that payments, and no government really pushed open banking payments. It was all about instant SEPA more than anything else, right? And but really, I think that the data element is going to declench that.
Yeah.
And if we get 27 countries or how many it might be by then to really implement this, we could put open banking or open finance and Europe back on the map. Because as we know, there's some international movements, and you know better than I that there are some global projects going on about how to interoperalize. That's a really difficult word. With the Bank of International Settlements, how to interoperalize all these different regulations and rails into global scheme. At the moment, the EU is watching. And they're not allowed to contribute as a full member.
On a FiDA level?
Well, no, this is about how you make all these different open finance schemes across the world interchangeable, cross-border, and cross-border in terms of the different global schemes, Brazil, And so I think it's really important that Europe stays on the map for that and that we don't lose out.
No, absolutely.
But we can't do it alone. And what we'll need? The accountants, we'll need the auditors, we'll need the lawyers. We'll need the fintechs, the innovators. We'll need the insurances to talk to banks.
Yeah, and the key question is, will the freedom that the market is being given now to set up their own schemes, will that lead to more national protectionism or a universal optimism towards more innovation?
To be honest, that's why I'm really excited that Joris and Deutsche Bank are taking a bit of a lead and putting themselves out there because they're an international player and they have zero interest in creating too many national schemes because it's going to be very costly for them to participate in all of them. In terms of people, it's going to be repetitive work. So I think we need more of the international players to step up. But then we also shouldn't forget the smaller ones. So we need to really kind of help shape the industry of making sure we do actually democratize and we do also make sure, the smaller financial advisors and the smaller private banks are not falling through the cracks.
The agentic artificial intelligent agents? Because we get into a world where you have all the
you're triggering me.
human
You're
factors
triggering me
playing,
on
but
that topic.
sorry?
You're triggering me with that topic. It's my favorite because I've been building in this space for the last few months with an
Yeah.
amazing company in Europe. Yes, of course. I mean, we just need to make sure banks are staying in the level playing field because we've recently learned that OpenAI has just bought or acqui-hired a very small company in the aggregation space.
Yeah.
We don't know. It's US company, so it doesn't really fall under any supervision and regulation, but it clearly shows the interest of OpenAI to actually move closer and closer.
Well, data is everything. Yeah.
To data and access to me. So the defensible barrier to that is consent and identity. And I think banks can play a super important game or play a role in this. And then the other news, which, a company I admire very much is Bud Financial. They've just announced that they have now integrated and built an MCP server. So basically any agent that wants to tap into open banking data can do that. Obviously, consent-based.
Yeah.
And, I'd love to look at that governance structure around that, but they've now made it public and they've actually launched it. I assume it's a ready product. And even if it's not, even if it's just in beta, that's actually a first to the market, but operate in the UK and the US. I'm not sure which territory they're launching it in first. I could imagine they're putting it into the UK sandbox, which again is amazing that the UK does have a sandbox, right?
Yeah.
So all these things are a really good sign that we're moving forward in the interest of the customer and in personalization. But really, we need to make sure our banks stay competitive.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Very exciting times ahead. And we'll continue that discussion in a few weeks in London.
Yes, but also, Rik, your topic of ethics and banking, stays so relevant in this whole thing, right? With agents performing banking tasks. So I really think that the organizational topic around agentic AI, as well as, the governance but really the intent, how do we want to operate? How do we want agents to operate? Your book is relevant more
and brings the
now
book into
than
a completely different context as well. Yeah, no, absolutely.
But,
It's very
I
topical because if
saw
you don't have that ethos right, how are you going to translate that properly in that virtual world? No,
Well,
absolutely.
we already have bias today, but we also have bias in conversational or in generative AI today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I saw the cues at your book signing at Sibos, and that was just a sign of the times.
Yeah, gave me goosebumps as well. All right, Nicola, thank you very much for joining us, and see you
Much
soon
for
in
having me.
London at Open Banking
See you in
Expo.
London.
Alrighty, bye-bye.
Rik also reached out to Anne-Sophie Morvan, Chief Commercial Officer at Luxhub, who will be a familiar face and voice to those who attended our conference in Luxembourg earlier this year.
Hello, Anne-Sophie. It was great to see a familiar face at the FiDA Data Studio session. Of course, from Luxembourg, probably Frankfurt isn't too far away. I believe that you were there the entire day.
Exact.
What were your key takeaways from the FiDA Data Studio that Deutsche Bank organized with TechQuartier?
This event was, as usual, extremely interesting. That was not the first time I was attending an event co-organized by TechQuartier and Deutsche Bank. And what it shows is that there is a real strategy from Deutsche Bank on APIs, on opening certain data and products.
Thank you, Joris.
It is extremely interesting to see the whole community around this because you had, of course, consulting firms, you had representative of other large banks, you had professors, etc., etc. So the community and the different stakeholders meet together, and I really appreciate a lot this wish to create together, to discuss together, knowing that currently on the European scene, there is a regulation that is currently in discussion. There is a lot of pushback from the different traditional financial institutions, if I may say. And it is very interesting to see that there is the wish from certain industry stakeholders to adopt it as a strategic project.
Yeah, all right. How involved is Luxhub in the German ecosystem when it comes to APIs, open banking, and FiDA?
Yes. So in Germany, Luxhub is as a little footprint, if I may say. We're not extremely involved. We follow, of course, a lot the initiatives of Deutsche Bank or other banks that have been deciding to turn
Yeah.
their open banking platform or API platform into a real product, into a new channel to distribute their products and their data. And we follow it very closely, of course, because that is a very interesting strategy, which we are trying also to advertise or push locally. And that's also why we were involved. But we also have
Yeah.
a few customers
No, I was
in
happily
Germany.
surprised to see you at the event. Well, looking at Luxembourg, what's the FiDA appetite there right now? I remember at our conferences last year, Luxembourg was the first time we actually discussed FiDA at a conference, and that was also right before the whole issue from the political press article saying that FiDA may be off the table. And it was the last time actually that we also convinced Rabobank of joining, but they were not actively involved. The guy was not actively involved in the whole FiDA discussion, I think. So Luxembourg was the only time that we actually had a banker to talk about FiDA this year in January. But how did that FiDA appetite grow or evolve in Luxembourg? And how do you think we can grow the interest in this topic there?
By showing some use cases, business cases that can bring value to the customers, that can bring new revenues to the financial institutions, that can create more stickiness with the customer base. So those are the things that can really push the financial institutions into open finance. I will not say that they will not officially push for FiDA, and that is very unlikely. There are some banks like Deutsche Bank that are quite progressive, if I may say. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say that in Luxembourg, it is far less strict or far less negative as what we can read, for instance, in France or other countries where there is a very, very strong pushback from certain associations or from the statement of the president of a bank, which I'm customer of, explaining that nobody is using open banking. Well, actually I am, and I'm aggregating the accounts from his bank into another
You're
bank because he
biased.
doesn't offer it. His bank doesn't offer it. That is, let's say, in Luxembourg, we are much more open on those topics, I find. There is more discussion, but of course, the banks, for them, it is a new compliance topic, FiDA. That's the reason why we try to push open finance use cases as much as possible, rather on the side of the opportunities, rather than only on the compliance, because this is seen as a burden.
No, absolutely. And good to know. We'll definitely add it on the agenda on January 27 at our conference in Luxembourg in that case. Anne-Sophie, thank you very much for quickly joining us in this session. And I'm sure we meet again very soon.
Thank you very much.
All right, speak again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We have a date in the diary to take a deeper dive into the topic with Joris Hensen himself. So stay tuned for more updates and don't forget to subscribe.